The man chosen to kill the most dangerous criminal on Earth wasn't a spook in a tailored suit or a covert operator backed by a flag. He was a Scottish ex-con with steel in his voice and war tattooed into his bones. Peter McAleese, once of the SAS, once of the Angolan and Rhodesian killing fields, was hired not by a government but by a cartel, and the target, Pablo Escobar, the drug lord who ran the Medellin cartel with enough power to make the Colombian state tremble. This is the true story of the time British mercenaries were sent to assassinate Escobar and how it all came undone. Peter McAleese grew up under the shadow of Barlinnie Prison in Glasgow, a place where brutality was language. His father, a hard man in every sense, taught him how to survive through violence. So, at 17, McAleese ran away to a place that would give his aggression a uniform, the British Army. He started with the Parachute Regiment, where pain was purpose, and later found his way into the SAS, the elite of the elite. He fought in the jungles of Borneo during the Indonesia-Malaysia confrontation, where death came through vines, mud, and silence. But in 1969, he made what he would later call the biggest mistake of his life. He left. What followed was a descent. McAleese couldn't adjust to civilian life. He drifted, drank, fought. He was sent to prison for assaulting a girlfriend. The battlefield had left its mark, and there was no room for that kind of fury in peacetime Britain. But war has many employers. By 1976, McAleese had become what many soldiers fear becoming, a man who couldn't stop. He found his way to Angola, fighting for the National Front for the liberation of Angola in a brutal civil war. The chaos suited him. So did the pay. It was there that he met Dave Tompkins, a wiry arms dealer who wasn't a soldier, but who knew how to sell like one. The two became fast friends, bonded by danger and a shared taste for the murky world of conflict for hire. In 1977, McAleese joined the Rhodesian SAS, fighting guerrilla insurgents in the bush wars of southern Africa. Again, he was at home, crouched low with a rifle, a cigarette, and nothing left to lose. By the 1980s, he was deep in the South African military machine, training elite troops in a world still ruled by apartheid shadows. But it wasn't a government that would next come calling. It was the underworld. In 1988, Tompkins reached out to McAleese in England with a job offer that barely needed an explanation. Colombia, high risk, high reward. The details came quickly. The job was commissioned by the Cali Cartel, arch rivals of Pablo Escobar's Medellin empire. They wanted Escobar dead. They had already tried and failed with local hit squads. This time, they wanted professionals. Through his arms trade contacts, Tompkins had met Jorge Salcedo, an officer in the Colombian army, with quiet connections to the Cali Cartel. Salcedo had helped plan a previous assault on leftist guerrilla forces, a mission that collapsed when promised weapons never materialized. But he hadn't forgotten Tompkins, or the kind of men he knew. The cartel offered Tompkins and McAleese an open budget, luxury accommodations, and total freedom from interference. Tompkins would earn $1,000 a day. McAleese and the other mercenaries, $5,000 a month, plus expenses. Their target was clear: kill Pablo Escobar at his private compound, Hacienda Nápoles. McAleese accepted. He was no longer a young man, but he was still lethal. He assembled a team of 12 men, mostly British, mostly ex-military, some of them former SAS operators, who had stormed the Iranian embassy in London in 1980. They landed in Colombia discreetly, helped through customs by Salcedo. At first, they were housed in Cali, but the risk of exposure was too high, so the team was relocated to a rural villa in the mountains, where a cache of weapons awaited them. It was like Christmas, McAleese later recalled. Everything we needed weapons-wise was there, from M16s to explosives smuggled in from the United States. The mercenaries were better equipped than some national armies. But this was no war. This was a contract, clean, surgical, and deniable. Only McAleese and Tompkins knew who the target was. One of the men, uneasy with the operation, dropped out and fled back to the UK, where he leaked vague details to the press. No names, no specifics. But the rumor mill started spinning. The Foreign Secretary at the time, John Major, condemned mercenary activity, but denied any knowledge of British nationals operating in Colombia. McAleese, years later, would insist both the British and US governments were aware and quietly supportive. For 11 weeks, the team trained relentlessly, rehearsing the assault on mock-ups of Escobar's estate, practicing in the jungle with live ammunition. They worked out scenarios, backup plans, contingencies. They studied the security layout of Hacienda Nápoles from aerial reconnaissance. It was massive: a private zoo, a bull ring, an airstrip, dozens of guards. Their plan was daring. 2 helicopters would descend onto the compound, One team would hit the perimeter. The second, carrying McAleese, would lead the charge inside. The goal was not capture. The goal was death, and proof of it. They would bring back Escobar's head. In the final hours before the assault, an informant confirmed Escobar was at the ranch. It was time. The helicopters took off under cloud cover, flying low through the Andes to avoid radar and watchful eyes, many of which, the team knew, were on Escobar's payroll. Then, the unthinkable happened. As they passed through thick cloud, one of the helicopters clipped the terrain and crashed into the mountainside. The pilot was killed instantly. McAleese and Tompkins survived, but were badly injured. McAleese lay on the slope, unable to move, in agony for 3 days before rescue. Down in the valley, Escobar had gotten word. He sent Sicarios into the mountains to find the mercenaries. Had they been caught, McAleese later said, it would have been a long, drawn-out, painful death. They barely got out. Even bruised and broken, McAleese wasn't finished. Back in Colombia, the team regrouped. The plan was to launch a second assault, this time from Panama. They spent weeks in hotels, awaiting orders, but their cover was slipping. TV crews caught wind of foreign mercenaries in the country. Rumors swirled. The heat was too much. The mission was called off, permanently. Escobar would survive the British hit squad, but not for long. The war between the Cali and Medellin cartels raged on. In 1993, Colombian forces finally cornered Pablo Escobar on a rooftop in Medellin. He was shot and killed. Not by mercenaries, but by police. McAleese, meanwhile, left the shadows of war behind, eventually becoming a pub landlord in England. In the twilight of his life, he reflected on his past not with pride, but with clarity. "I was trained to kill by the army," he once said, but the fighting instinct came from Glasgow. He didn't regret the battles. He regretted what they cost him, as a husband, as a father. He once called himself a dirty, low-down scumbag of a man. But by the time the 2021 documentary Killing Escobar aired, he said he had found peace. Peter McAleese died in March 2024, at the age of 81. The mission to kill Pablo Escobar is one of those stories too strange for fiction. A rogue hit squad of British mercenaries, hired by a cartel, financed like kings, trained like soldiers, undone by fate. They never pulled the trigger, but for a moment, they stood at the edge of history, poised to change the future with a bullet, and then the jungle took them back. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.